Okay, to introduce myself, I'm Daniel Keith West, or D. Keith West, but I go by Keith. I'm a financial advisor, and what I'm going to talk about today is me and who I am, what I do, and then I'm going to go into the essentials of financial planning. So it's kind of two parts. And then at that point, you can all ask any questions that might come up. So my daily discussions with all my clients run around money, the good and bad. Yes, I did say bad, and we'll go over that a little bit, but there are some bad things to realize or to talk about. I've been a financial advisor for 12 years. I've worked for banks and wirehouses, and now I'm independent. In my practice, just talk about that briefly, I use Pershing to settle my trades, McNally Financial to do my compliance, and then for bank products, I use Bank of New York Mellon. No matter where I have been, my boss controlled everything, from the size of my accounts, who I worked with, to a small investment products, or give me a small menu to pick from to help my clients. Now being independent, I can use whoever works for best for my clients. And over the years, I found great mutual funds, I've found great investments at every place I've been, so now you get it all with me. So a little bit about me is I enjoy volunteering, and I've been on the board of a couple of different nonprofits. The Alzheimer's Association, Desert Southwest Chapter. I lost my grandfather to Alzheimer's. It's a horrible disease. So that's where I was at when this building wasn't even here. So I used to cold call to get people to donate to Alzheimer's, and they would tell me, I've already had that in the same conversation. I've already donated to to the Alzheimer's Association. And then when I talked to them a little bit more, it's because they gave it to LouRuvo. Well, that's not the Alzheimer's Association. So then we talked about that and went around that. And I was on the board for Nevada and Arizona, so we would go to Arizona to meet. So I learned a lot about how to help clients that have Alzheimer's around their family, because it's a genetic disease. And then I was on the board of Help of Southern Nevada, which is the largest is the largest local nonprofit. And then now I work with, I'm a Rotarian. I'm in a Rotary Club in the downtown Las Vegas. It's a Fremont Rotary. And we deal with a lot of good things, which I like. It's fun to donate time to people to make them feel better. Like next month, in the holidays, we're going to go and give a whole school Thanksgiving and a backpack to take home to eat over the weekend. And then closer to Christmas, we're actually going to sit down with Nellis and the people that don't have family here. And we're going to sit down with them and feed them dinner one day. So a little bit about me. Today I'm also going to tell my story about living with MS, and we'll go into that and the diagnosis. This coming July, it'll be 18 years since I was diagnosed. I was 18 when I was diagnosed. This March I'll be 36, half my life. So it's helped me in my career because there are potholes to maneuver around or to plow through like I did, which isn't fun, which I can help avoid. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. And then I have to say that I am not a CPA, obviously, or an attorney. So if you have tax questions or legal questions, you should find somebody to talk to. It's not me. Today it's just my opinions. And at the end of this, please grab my card if you would like to have if you have any other questions that I can help with. I'll be more than happy to help. So now we'll go back to my diagnosis, and I'll tell you a little bit of my story. my goal from a small child was to play in the NFL. Sorry, I mumble a lot too. So it was to play in the NFL, but I had to gain weight. So that's all I did in high school. Football was my life. I would eat 10 to 12,000 calories a day. This is a good town. I grew up here. I moved here when I was 10 from Wyoming. I didn't really like it at first. When I was older, I love it. I love it now. So living here, trying to gain weight is pretty easy. So we'd go in for breakfast buffets or lunch buffets, and we'd say they would kick us out. And we'd just keep eating. And all my friends were linemen. They were big, but I could eat more than I could. I can eat a lot. So when I was 18, right before I graduated, I was go-kart racing with my cousins. I got in a wreck, of course, because you got to be aggressive if you're go-kart racing. I didn't think anything of it. The next day, my foot was numb, and my hand a little bit. I thought it would go away. It didn't. After a couple weeks, I realized that I had to go to see somebody. So I went to see a neurologist. Then they put me through a myriad of tests. I'm sure you've all gone through that. So similar, it hasn't changed much for what they do. So I learned two things. At first, right away they did it with, I don't know what it's called. Can anybody help me with this? It's like a sonar, but it's for nerves. EMG? Yeah, there you go. So an EMG. And I was asked the lab tech, and I learned, don't ask a lab tech, because they're going to tell you what they think. Well, what they think isn't necessarily true. So she told me, you had significant nerve damage. And it kind of made sense, because I had a reckless disregard for my own body when I was younger. Motorcycle riding, football, everything. So it kind of made sense. And okay, well, it turns out I didn't have it. Then I had to have a spinal tap or a lumbar puncture. I had that. I also made the same mistake where I talked to people about it. I'd asked my friends, or told my friends that I needed a spinal tap, and almost to the person, they said, well, don't do that because you're going to end up paralyzed. Well, that's not right. I mean, it happens, but it's not going to happen. It didn't happen, thank God. So I learned not to talk to people about it. So. Yeah, oh yeah. And you should talk to your doctor. But your friends, their opinions don't really matter.
Yeah, all I got was you're too young to have that. That's got to be wrong.
Right.
It's not.
Right, yeah. And because you're a man. You probably I used to get that all the time. Oh, you're young and a man, that's weird. So I would capitalize with it. So I got into any doctor I wanted pretty much. Anywhere I moved. I lived in San Diego for a short time and here. Because I was a young man with MS. So it made me feel more like a lab rat. And eventually you got sick of it. Or I got sick of it. Do the tests and the foot and everything. So I could do that. And I know I did that and I was fine with that. And it helped me get into my doctors, which was good. But the side effect is emotionally, it's not fun to be a lab rat. Sorry. So after going through all the tests, they came back, and I sat down to talk with her with everything back. And the doctor told me, Keith, you have MS. You can't work out ever again. Your life is changed. That's wrong. It's completely wrong. It's just not true. But I was 18 and I was devastated. Because the whole thing with having a disease, having something, is the whole emotional aspect to it too. So anyway, I didn't want to believe her. So I wanted to find out if it was true, because MS is one of the biggest misdiagnosed diseases. Not talk about it specifically, but anybody that watched House, in every single episode, they brought up, you have MS? And it was always something off the wall. I don't know if you're familiar with the show, it's not on anymore. But MS is where it started. So everybody has at some point, what? At some point, they will. I won't even say that. So anyway. So anyway, I didn't believe her. I wanted to go get a second opinion. So I went to UCLA, and my doctor was Dr. Rosen. And he was awesome. I went through the same tests. We drove to LA with my mom and dad and their divorce, and they drove me up, or down, or whatever LA is. LA, California. Yeah. So basically, we went through all the same rigmarole. He said, Keith, we can't prove it, and I'm not gonna, but I feel in my heart that you do have MS. And it really set me back a little bit. I mean, I was 18, not to reiterate that point, but I was 18. I wasn't happy with that at all, but I was 18. It's all, we're going back, looking back, it's all your attitude and how you deal with it. Everything in life. There are bad things. There's always somebody better, somebody worse. And he told me that he told me that he wouldn't diagnose me with it because it would cause a lot of problems in my future. So I was 18 again. So I was 18, I didn't know what to say because I didn't know very much. So I just kind of listened. The whole drive back from LA to Las Vegas, I'm like, what do they mean? Like, oh, I have MS, but what does that mean? Well, what it meant was, I think, so when I got home, that's all I could do was research what he meant. What I think he meant, I've never talked to him again, but what I think he meant was insurance. If I lapsed in insurance, then I'll never get insurance again, basically, or without paying an arm and a leg for it. So with that, I was very careful to always have insurance or be on COBRA. And I've had a lot of problems with insurance over the years. But now with Obamacare, it's changed some. So, which is good. So a lot of things have changed. So briefly, I want to talk about this. The world is getting more specialized every day. In 2010, from 1950 to 2010, all the information in the world, if you read every book, was about 5 exabytes. I wasn't familiar with exabytes either, but it's 1 billion, basically, 1 billion gigabytes of information in the world. Today, in 2014, we get 5 exabytes every 10 minutes. It should make you feel good because everything is getting better. And definitely with advances in medicine, advances in how you deal with it, in medical devices, everything is getting better. And over the years, medicines have changed. So I've been on a ton of medicine, but very little of it worked. So, and you have different side effects with different things, and we won't get into that too much. I'm open to talk about it, just now's not the time. So from medicines for MS or an antidepressant, it took years to find what works for me. So I would have an attack every quarter, every 3 months. It would be bad, and it would range, for me, it's always bad when it's you, but it would range from going numb to optic neuritis. So it would range. So I'd gone on a new medicine, and we won't talk about names because you see famous people with MS don't talk about what they take because it's all different. Everything's different, which is very much like financial advising because everybody's different. There's different variables. So there isn't one thing that's good for everyone with medicine or financial advising. There isn't one product. But now that I'm on this medicine, so I have to get it once a month, and I haven't had one attack in 3 years. With saying that, so one of the things that I hate is when you go see a doctor and they make you do an MRI. I get it. I understand why. But I hate looking at the MRI and how your brain is dying. That's your brain. Like, whew, it makes you emotional. And the older I get, the more I cry. So anyway, I don't like it. But everybody has their things they don't like. So, but you have to do something to see. I still have the disease. I'm sure something's happening, but I would rather not know. For example, 3 types of MS. Relapse remitting, which hopefully I'm still in. Secondary progressive. Third one, I don't know. I don't care. It's bad. And it might never happen. So I pretend it'll never happen, and I'm fine with that. You have to find what works for you. Everybody's different. Just like if you haven't had it already, but when you get online and you look at MS, there's always something that's ridiculously horrible to you. You'll find it. Keep reading. Or don't. Yeah, right. Yeah, don't. In my opinion, don't. You might have a different opinion over there, but don't. It's not good to. That's what a doctor's for. I mean,
have a twisted sense of humor, so I mean.
and that's good because you have to, right? I've always felt like I can deal with whatever happens, but the hard part of MS is whatever happens is unknown. So something different will happen almost every time. So that's the hard part for me. Everybody has different hard parts. And the stages of dealing with your diagnosis, basically, you look into that a little bit, and the stages can be anywhere from 5 to 12. There's a whole bunch of stages. But it's all different, too, because they overlap. Like, for example, denial. When I was first told, I didn't tell anybody, not a soul, outside my immediate family for 13 years. I told my ex-wife when she was my girlfriend, and she was good with it until her family found out, and you always have to deal with whatever happens. But there will be people that shouldn't be in your life, so you probably should cut them out, in my opinion.
Blessing in disguise.
Right, no it is. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it definitely is. And everybody's like that. And when you talk to them, if they're not able to deal with you, sorry, I keep touching that. If they're not able to deal with you, then you shouldn't deal with them. And you're probably better for it. And that's my 2 cents. Yeah, so even now, so I've had it for 17 years right now. I didn't start telling 5 years ago. I started telling even my good friends, and their reactions were amazing. What I did wrong was I thought they should react a certain way. Well, that's not very fair of me because there's no win for them. There's nothing they could do, with a few exceptions, but there's basically nothing that would make you happy. You know, you're telling them to get it off your chest, and you should, some people, but there's a time and a place for it. So, and you'll know when that is if you haven't, or if you have started telling people. It's interesting just to see how they react. I've rarely come away feeling better from it. So, it's your disease. It's you. You need to own it. So, that's a big part of it. Some of the brighter notes. So Warren Buffett talks about investing in things that you spend money in. So Clorox, you can go on and on. Warren Buffett, he's amazing. And so the way that it works, so now there's amazing things coming on the horizon. There's a new company right now. It's called, I went blank, ID Genetics. They're looking at your genetics to see what medicine will work for you. So they're going to do everything that I did over 13 years. They're having little hiccups, but they have things in process and they're working through it. Lots of different things. for example, wheelchairs. Thank God I don't need one now, but maybe one day. So the wheelchairs now, they have one on tank tracks. I don't know if you've seen it. It's, what do they call it? Action wheelchairs, I think is what it's called. And it's on tank tracks. So you could pretty much do anything you can do with legs. It's pretty amazing. So life is getting better. If there's ever a time to have MS, it's now, which doesn't make anybody happy. I mean, you still gotta, but it's true. Right, right.
2 years ago, fuck.
Right? No, and that's pretty true. I mean, I won't talk about that because I don't know that much about it. And as a financial planner, so this is the first time that I've been able to use my MS to help my clients. So I talk about it. Because everybody will have health problems. It's just a matter of time. We just deal with it earlier. Everybody will if you live long enough. That's just life. So it's all about having a good attitude and getting through it. But it all changes. And so going through how to get through it. So the 5 stages would be denial, anger, bargaining. Thank you. Depression. And then there you go. You guys are good. Yeah, which is huge. Right. It doesn't matter, you got a good knowledge. So in that, it's interesting to me to look back because obviously I did denial first. I kind of went right through them, but not right through them, through the years. So when I was in denial, I still had anger. I still have a speckle through my life. And that's how I deal with things. So then you go through it. And once you're through, I think now I'm finally in the acceptance stage, but I still bounce through it. I mean, I'm in the acceptance stage, but I go back. So it's overlapping. So I'm learning more. So always. That's one of the benefits of having a disease that's different all the time. Okay, so I get it incorporated into my business. One of my clients, this is right on point. So his son, their son, has Down syndrome. And this is what we talk about, money not necessarily being good for you. So they thought when they're gone, they're gonna just let him inherit all the money. Well, going through it, then I have a bunch of attorneys that I work with. They pick one. They set up a trust. So it's never in that child's name. If it stayed in that child's name the whole time, a special needs trust is what they ended up doing, but there's like 3 or 4 choices. If they stayed giving him the money, if he ever wanted government assistance, he couldn't get it. Because with Medicaid has cash amounts and it changes. A couple years ago it was $2,000. So they would have to spend the whole amount down before the government helped. That's difficult. So, and now with autism being so strong, one of my good friends, he's a baby, he's 18 months, was diagnosed with autism. And it's pretty amazing, but it's similar. It's not Down syndrome, but it's something that he won't be able to take care of himself. And I have the ability with my partners to make it so that kid is going to be okay. It makes me feel good. So that's how money can be bad if you don't know what you're doing with it. So now let's talk about some of the essentials to financial planning. The stock market is by far the best investment over long term to outpace inflation, period. You can find other things, but stock market is the most liquid because you want to keep your purchasing power. What that means is some of it will be eaten up by inflation just in time. So the stock market is going to keep pace the fastest. So So let's start with a budget. A budget is the first step. It's what you need to get down. So a budget is what you spend. So you need to look at it on a yearly number because insurance generally changes every year. And it's probably changing as we're talking. It changes constantly. So what happens with Obamacare is the deductibles went up, so you need to plan to hit those. If you can plan for it, it's a lot easier to plan for things you foresee. But then when you get with the financial planner, they go through everything. So all the different options, all the amounts, the different things like that. But that's the first part. And then your expenses after the budget. It takes a while to get done, but then your expenses, the money going out. And then you get with someone to talk about ways to make your expenses less, where you can cut back, where you can deal with your debt better. Most people don't deal with their debt in a proper way. A lot of people, credit cards. Credit cards are extremely high interest rates. There's ways to consolidate it. So you get the rate lower and manageable. And then you talk about cutting some of the spending down. And then you can find different ways. But that's two of the things that I deal with clients daily. So when I worked other places, a financial plan, they wanted me to charge $2,500 for a financial plan. I didn't do it, and I refuse now. If anybody's asking you to pay for a financial plan, tell them no and find somebody else. And there's lots of financial planners. So now the biggest part, so generally it's retirement, but it's not just retirement, it's living and retirement, and how to build a portfolio. That's what I sit down with my clients and do. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So we'll talk about the different types of risks. People don't realize there are tons of them. So it's not the market going up and down. It's needing money when the market's down, or needing money at the wrong time. And that happens a lot, and you see that over the last 5 years especially. How companies do that, and then they're in trouble. So there are different types of risks. The risks I'm talking about, like market risk, so the principal going up and down. Inflation, so your purchasing power risk, that's what I help with. Interest rate risk on bonds, on CDs, things like that. There's a lot of different ways. Special situation risk, if you have something that you're saving for, that's special situation. Political risk, it's hard to avoid that, there are ways. And societal risk, which is, there's never a good time to invest. There's never a bad time, even in the bad times. That didn't make sense. So there's always time to invest, even when there's bad things going on around the world. Okay, now we'll go over just briefly stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, and just kind of what I do for my clients. So let's talk about stock first, and that leads to mutual funds. So we'll talk about domestic stock. There's a lot of different ones. And there's even smaller ones. These are the company sizes. So with a large, you're looking at 10 billion. Name a company, please. Anybody? It's probably a large company if you can name it. Yeah, a very large company. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, very large company as well. So pretty much every company you're going to name is a large company. So they're 10 billion and up. Then they have mega caps and all sorts of different ways. But this is just how to look at it basically. So a mid-cap company is a smaller company that's trying to get big, obviously. So this is 2 to 10 billion with a B. So the mid-range. And the risk goes down. So if you're talking about risk, market risk, there's a very small chance that Apple's going broke. So that's a large company, you don't have to worry about it. But as it goes down, so does the chance that it will go bankrupt. So with smaller companies, and then there are micro caps, there's a whole bunch of other ones. But generally speaking, just historically speaking, a large company over a 5-year term makes about 8%. And mid is about 10. This is over a period. So will the market be up or down tomorrow? Coin flip. Nobody knows. If you did, you wouldn't be here. Nobody, I mean, you'd be on the beach. But you don't have to worry about it. Long term, it's going to make money. There are different ways to look at it. So that's the basics on stocks. And there are a bunch of ways to buy them, sell them, all that. And we won't really get into that. I'm just kind of going over the whole grasp. And then bonds, I won't talk much about bonds either. But bonds you could think of like a CD. So depending on the interest rate environment is basically what bonds come from. So there are two types of bonds. Corporate, so that's company bonds. Yeah, I'm not really writing that well. And munis. Munis are municipalities. So they're trying to bring debt and give debt, and it's tax-free. So what they're paying is tax-free. The rates are a little bit lower than corporate bonds, generally. I mean, there are a lot of ways to break it up. With munis, there's revenue and general obligation bonds, and it depends on the municipality. So that's where the risk comes in, is where you're getting it. For example, California, haven't touched California municipal bond ever. Zach could never recommend California bonds because they're broke. So it's only a matter of time until they say no more, you don't get any more money. My opinion again. But there are so many options. So now we'll get into more, hopefully familiar stuff for you. So mutual funds. Mutual funds are basically, am I all right? So basically a mutual fund is a shell. They take investments and they put it in the mutual fund wrapper. So a mutual fund is a way to diversify. It's how the smaller investor, when I say smaller, less than, 500 million. So not that small. But it's how they invest like Donald Trump. Donald Trump has teams of people to invest for him. With a mutual fund, generally, it's a money manager that manages the portfolio. And you can base that on your risk. That's kind of what we'll go over. Oops. That's not very good. On Morningstar, this is the graph that they show all the time. So this is how it breaks down, and this is how I do my portfolios through research. But this is how it goes. So this is large, mid, and small. A mutual fund will go after one thing. So a large cap growth or large cap value. So two, and then I'll explain it this way. So there's value and growth. A company can be either one. So a growth company puts all their money back into the company because they know what to do with the funds. A value company gives it back to the shareholders in the form of a dividend. They can do special dividends or they can do quarterly dividends. So, and then there's a blend, which is basically in the middle. where would Chevron be? Just throw that out there. Chevron, big company. That's good, guys. And a lot of them, they think they're growth, but they're more of a value. More energy plays like that are going to be, they give a dividend. So they're not trying to grow as much as they're trying to keep their clients happy. They're just trying to exist. So that would be it. So large cap value will be one fund. And they'll talk about in the prospectus, or the fund manager will talk about what the fund is going to do. Occasionally, you find fund managers that dip because they can get more money, they can get better performance with a smaller cap, but the risk goes up. So as soon as they're dipping or they're moving around, I fire them and we find somebody else. So on the mutual funds, any guesses how many mutual funds there are? There's more than 7,000 mutual funds. And there's a whole bunch of different ways to get large cap value. It doesn't have to be in a mutual fund. But generally, that's the smartest way going forward to find one that works for you. And sit down with somebody, not one. Find a portfolio. So what I do is I look, sometimes it's like that, or one of my favorite mutual funds, BlackRock Global Allocation. They use everything, a little bit of everything. I'm not recommending that, again. So the way that works, so BlackRock Global Allocation has a third in America stocks, a third in Europe stocks, and a third in America bonds. So there are mutual funds that do everything. It's just finding one. I could talk about them all day long, so I have to cut myself off. But there are funds that go more towards oil. If you want an oil play, there's great ways to do that. Russia is a great one. Russia is predominantly an energy play. So it depends. So whatever your situation is when you sit down and talk with your financial advisor, he can find something that works. I have clients that are Republican. I have clients that are Democrats. It doesn't matter to me. We'll talk about it, but it does to them. So they'll put their money in what they use because people listen to Warren Buffett, and they'll put money in stuff they use. So, and that's how they invest, same way. So it goes either way. And there are tons of investments to do both. So one of the other things, just talk about real fast. So that's what a financial advisor does. So that, by the way, was for domestic stocks. There are mutual funds, stock markets all over the world, obviously. It used to be the BRIC countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, were the up-and-coming countries where they had huge spreads. So China was number one in the world. Every other year, they're number one for some reason. And they're growing gangbusters, which is good. But they're capitalist communists, which changes the game quite a bit. So anyway, it depends on your risks. Political risk is a huge one with China. What I spend a lot of time with my clients, they have questions about annuities. That's just an abbreviation. So there are 3 types of annuities. So there are 3 types of annuities. Fixed is more like a CD, but it grows tax deferred. But they're CD rates, they're a fixed rate. So right now they're very low, very low. You need to go 5 years-ish to get close to 2%. So crazy. So index will be like they use an ETF. I didn't even talk about an ETF, but it's the market. And they come about them different ways, but with an index, so they'll go off the off the stock market, but you can't lose money. So in negative years, they give you a rate of return or you're flat. So they're good for the specific client. The next one is a VA, variable annuity. It's the way to invest with mutual funds. There's great things that those do. Also very bad. They're expensive, but they're going to give you income for the rest of your life. So it just depends what you want and what you need. So like having MS, everybody's different. Investing or having MS. So that is generally kind of what I wanted to go over. Does anybody have any questions? Nothing? I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Do you deal with like IRAs?
That's exactly what I do.
Oh, that's all you do?
No, I do everything.
Oh, okay.
So yes, I do.
Like with that, like for us, like because we're just, we're getting married soon.
Oh,
like, what
congratulations.
would, an IRA would be beneficial for
Yeah,
us?
so basically, kind of look at it, an IRA like a mutual fund. An IRA is something you can get tax deferred. You can only contribute up to $6,000 this year, but it's going to be different. You can take anything in an IRA, any investment, and put it in an IRA.
Okay.
So, yeah, yes, I do that, and yes, there's a lot of things that you can do. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
I was just wondering, so when you go to a financial planner, you're not paying for the plan, so what are you paying them? Like, how do you pay a financial planner?
So generally how it works, I would never pay a financial planner.
Okay.
That's a great question. I never would, but it's how they make their money is off the investments. Sometimes it comes out of your money, sometimes it doesn't. It just has to do with their investments. So like with annuities, it doesn't come out of a client's money at all. The insurance company is paying for it. So yeah, I would never pay for one.
Because I think you think of a financial planner as maybe something that's expensive.
Yeah, and they can be. Like I was telling you, everywhere I worked, they wanted me to charge $2,500 for a plan, and that's just wrong. I just don't agree with it at all. So there are a lot of different options. I wouldn't do that. But there's only so much time in the day. If time wasn't an issue, then you could do them all for free. In general, I do them all for free because it's off the investments that I make money. So, does that answer? Yeah, that's a good question. It's so funny because I have clients that call me every day. I have some that call me once a quarter. But at the minimum, you should sit down with them once a year. With my clients, I tell them, we're going to sit down and talk just to see if anything changed. Because not only do things change in the environment, but things change with them. So I think you should sit down with them once a year, but you should talk to them every quarter. Good question.
Can anyone make money? At any income?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So it's going to depend on your risk parameters. It always depends. So yes, anybody can make money, but it'll be for how long? Because time horizon, liquidity is a huge reason people pull out of the market. But that takes away when you pull out. It's when you run out of money, which nobody knows when that is. So there are ways to do that. And there are ways to make sure things work for you. For example, mutual funds, there are some that you have to keep for a year in C-share mutual funds. You don't pay any sales charge up front, but they have a very high 12B1, which is the annual fee. 12B1 is just industry stuff, but it's an annual fee, so it's 2% a year. It just comes out, you don't write a check, it just comes out of your investment. So there are things that will handcuff you. And that's where a financial advisor needs to look at and make sure that you're going to be okay for anything you might need or might come up.
Would you be able to comment on maybe life insurance and MS and if that's a hindrance to cost greater rates or what's the...
Yeah, absolutely. So generally with life insurance, you can get it, but it depends. Because if they run a whole background check, and they will, at a certain dollar amount. Everybody's different, all the different companies. But some they won't. So you can keep it within the limits and not have the background check, and they don't need to know that you have MF. So there are ways to do it, yeah. And it's interesting because I've never sold health insurance until this year when I went independent in 2014. I sell health insurance now, and everything has changed and is changing constantly, like I was saying. But having MS is great because it's working in our benefit. Yeah, so. Anybody else? Go ahead.
Say I want disability. I got a great offer for me. I mean, I got a $200 house waiting for me. $200 a month house waiting for me. If I go on disability and say she's working and making $3,000 a month, will disability hit me if we're investing money for the long-term future?
The short answer, I'm not the guy that will answer that the best. Usually it's an attorney or a CPA can answer that better than I can, but I'll give you my opinion. Yes, it can hit you, but there are things you can do very simply to stay away from that. I shouldn't say too much, but yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's something you can plan for. That's, yeah.
I have just a question
Yeah.
about disability in general.
Mhm.
My cousin swears I can get it and should go on it. My concern is, if say a few years from now, I don't work, I'm home. I did work, but I don't. But my concern is, say in a few years something happens to my husband and I want to go back to work. Is it a hindrance to have been on disability?
And so again, that's not really a question for me, but it's a good question. And I wish I had the answers. I don't. I wish. But no, is my opinion. I don't think it's a hindrance at all. But
You just say,
but that's a good question to ask somebody that should be answering that. But go ahead.
well, I didn't know if when you decide you don't need disability, is it like a thing, once you've got it, you always have it? Or can you say, I used it then, I don't need it now, I'm going back to work? I mean, can you even do that?
I think it's supposed to be like that.
Is it?
So it's not permanent.
Right.
The benefits you get, though, if you start going back to work, you don't get anymore because then you're working. So it's not you're on
It's not
disability.
something that's gonna-
It's not you're on disability, you can't ever work again. I actually think that's the wrong message to give.
Yeah.
People feel that because once you start looking for work, then you lose your disability payments, which then is a tough transition time. So having a financial plan in order when you do those things is actually very important. They actually, when you can go back to part-time work, you can transition, you can still get payments, they're reduced, they change. And again, it's my understanding of it, that you actually do need to talk to someone familiar with paperwork and benefits and like that. And it's different for every state that you're in too, so it just depends on other things.
Do you know, insurance-wise, is it?
What
better
type of
get
insurance?
disability
When you say
with some
insurance,
kind of insurance?
when you say insurance, what type of
Health
insurance?
insurance.
Yeah, so now that changes, like I was talking, almost daily, changes constantly. But right now the way it is pre-existing is off the table, you don't have to worry about it. Will it change tomorrow? Nobody knows.
Is there a kind of disability insurance, or?
There is, but having MS is difficult to get. But that's more of a questions too that aren't for me, they're for an attorney. Yeah. So thank you all for being there, and please grab a card on the way out and let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.